You were born with individual strengths and a unique purpose. Don't let fears, false beliefs, or life's happenings diminish your influence. It's time to live and lead for impact. Host Kirsten Ross, expert of transformation, will help you defeat the drama and overcome the trauma that can stop you in your tracks. You'll gain focus, find confidence, and take bold action. Unleash passionate, purposeful you. Let's go.
Welcome to Live and Lead for Impact. I'm Kirsten Ross Vogel, your host, and this is episode 255. Today's guest is going to be phenomenal. I can't wait for you to meet him. His name is Nathanael Garrett Novosel. He is a professional researcher and advisor with over 20 years of experience studying individual and group behavior. Nathanael spent most of his career using the insights from this research to help the world's leading executives solve their most pressing organizational challenges and create their strategic plans. Noticing the common drivers of success in all areas of life, he decided to devote his research, problem solving, and advisory skills to helping people live the best lives possible. He's also author of The Meaning of Life, the book. And you can find more information about that by going to yourmeaninginlife.com. And of course, that link, as always, will be at today's show notes. But I want to bring him on. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I look forward to learning more about your work, and I love the shift that you've taken and how you're utilizing your research, studying experience. So tell me about your work more specifically, and what impact is it that you're working to make in the world?
Sure. So, all started when I was 6. So my father disappeared in the middle of the night when I was 5. And while I don't remember how I felt because I didn't have full memories formed yet, I know when I was 6, when I went to see him the next year, I went out for 3 weeks and 2 days to see him in California. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I felt like someone ripped my heart out of my chest when I got back to Pittsburgh. It just felt hopeless and empty and worthless and miserable. And I wouldn't wish that feeling upon anyone. So at that moment, though, I asked myself, like, what is the point of all this? We're going to suffer. This is painful and hurts, and I don't I don't want to experience this. And then the back of my brain said, that's a fascinating question. What's the meaning of life? I wonder if anyone knows the answer to that.
This is at 7 or 6.
Yeah,
6?
that's 6. Yeah, 6 years old. I'm asking myself what the meaning of life is.
Wow. I feel like you hit that question a little earlier than most.
Well, and on top of it, I have just a mild like Asperger's, so I have trouble with human connection and things like that, making friends. And so I study human behavior to try to emulate human behavior as well. So there was a little bit of trying to answer that question, a little bit trying to understand how the mind works and how everything works. So I did that for I don't know, I think it was about 23 years before I came up with the idea that if I were to write a book, I would communicate what's important in life. How would I do that? And at first it was kind of a success thing that I wanted to convey to people because I was changing jobs and I was imagining a speech. I didn't give it, but I was thinking about it. And I was like, well, you need desire, you need belief. And I started listing these things. And I was like, well, yeah, but is this success? What's the point? And then that 23-year-old thing at the time came into my mind and said, well, like, what's meaning? And I was like, well, yeah, desire, belief. And I was like, well, what's all about growth? And it's about trying to be better and help people around you and things like that. So I was like, well, wait a second. And I was onto something. So I identified, at first it was I think it was 5 and 7, and then finally 8, after I kind of thought about it and worked through it. There are 8 drivers that drive a human's sense of meaning and purpose in their lives. And so what I hope to do is that after reading all these different books and opinions, the 2 biggest issues I had were that people couldn't separate quote unquote, the meaning of life from what ethics you should have and what goal you should have. And goals are subjective and ethics are dependent on the goal. Should you run 3 times a week? Well, are you trying to run for a marathon? Well, you should do more than that. If you don't care, then don't even have to run that much. So so you can't answer those questions, and yet people are imparting them onto others like their gospel, no pun intended there. And then the other thing that bothered me is that people told you assumed a goal when they gave you a self-help book, like success or money or, running a business. And that's fine if you know what the goal is, but if you don't know what the goal is, then how do you figure it out? So what I was hoping to do is first create a description or explanation that was scientific, but also, left open the possibility of spiritual involvement in the universe. I didn't have an opinion on it. I just said, can we please set it aside because I can't prove it. But then the second thing is I wanted to be able to have a guide for someone who didn't did know what they wanted and didn't want to be unnecessarily or unduly influenced by another person who's kind of putting their ethics on them.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack from that. And I have so many questions, follow-up questions. I'm trying to like wrap my brain. Okay.
Sure.
Because definitely we need to unpack these 8. And I also love how you're, talking about, because I think it's beyond ethics, even like others can push us in direction. I call it the lazy river way of doing life, which is like life experiences or other people just bump us along, and that we need to get our arms in the water. But to do that, you got to figure out what's the direction. And so that's that whole meaning of life thing. But I feel like I need to backtrack and say, like, at what point did you start diving into these more comprehensive or specific questions around this? You kind of you jump from age 6 to into your 20s. So what did you kind of figure out? Or I'm enthralled by the fact that these questions came up for you. As someone who sometimes I'm working with people in their 50s and they still haven't talked about it. But so you were you were 6. And so what level of or capacity did you have to kind of even think about it at that point? And then let's jump to the 8 and the ethics and all of that.
Yeah. So between that giant jump was just decades of studying everything I could get my hands on. So psychology, philosophy, religions, and then even sciences like biology and so forth. I mean, one of my favorite documentaries of all time was the Nova one on becoming human. I think it's what it's called. And it shows how all the things how humans evolve, like why do we have less hair than other primates? And it's because, we were running around in the heat for long distances. And so we developed sweat glands so we could survive and make it so we can hunt for food better. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. And so like all that cool insight, I just sucked it all up. But yeah, it wasn't the reason why there was a long time jump is that I understood how all of it worked and I could explain to other people and people were like, wow, that's amazing. And everyone was surprised. And I had this weird thing where I was like, well, if I knew it, then everyone knew it. It was just this dumb thing. So it wasn't until I was about, I think it was 29-ish, give or take, is when I really said, well, if I were to explain everything I learned over decades to someone else, how would I explain it in a way that would help them be successful? But then I over-explain things. It's just a nature of who I am. And so it's like, how can I break it down? Like I gave myself some rules when I was starting to write the outline, which is each chapter just had to be one word. I couldn't, because like I would be like, blah, 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 blah. That would be me. And so I was like, no, one word for each chapter. Then you can explain all you want, but summarize it and even have a paragraph at the beginning that explains what you're talking about. And so as I did that, that's how I crafted these 8 things. They're concepts that underline a person's sense of meaning. So it's not saying here's what your meaning in life should be, but it's here's how you derive meaning in your life. So master these ideas and use them to find a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. So it's more of a how-to book, not a what to think book.
That's awesome. Well, and also I'd love to circle back to that. So at 6, did you already realize that you were on the spectrum and began kind of studying how to emulate versus kind of naturally doing that? Or was it later? And how has this work helped you?
I didn't get diagnosed till a few years ago.
Okay. And you're oh yeah, that's what was going on.
No one knew. I was just really quiet when I was a kid. And I noticed that people would be bored when I talked. And then there was just stuff like that. And then I'd watch all these movies and see all these people with friends and having fun and doing all this stuff. And 3 things crossed my mind. One is like, my life is nothing like that. Secondly, I wonder if I could somehow learn how to behave in that way to get that result. And then the final kind of nail in the coffin there was realizing I actually don't like those things. Like it was like I like reading, or I like playing video games, or I like doing stuff alone and like trying to like parties just I don't understand them. I'm like, so I'm trying to break it down. This is how analytical I am. So I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of people standing. There's music in the background. You're holding drinks. Sometimes you're dancing. Sometimes you're not. You're talking to other people. It's mostly small talk. And then you go from one group to another. How do you do that? So I'm sitting there like, because my brain thinks more like a computer than a human. So I'm sitting there trying to like figure out how to calculate how to behave in a party. And it's just like, and I just get exhausted. And I'm just like, so I just thought I was an introvert most of my life. And then I actually took an Asperger's test because it said, well, if it looks kind of like introversion, but then you also have these things. And I actually took the test, and I think it's like a minimum of 30 that says, well, you're probably on the spectrum. And I scored, I forget the exact number. I think it was like a 44 or something. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe I do have some beyond just being an introvert.
Yeah. Well, kudos. And I must say, I mean, I think a lot of people, but underneath when they're at those parties are kind of thinking and being calculated as well. Like, how long do I have to stand with this certain group of people? Because this is not interesting at all. and how can I smoothly move on to the next or figure out something that's entertaining and where I can enjoy myself? So,
Yeah.
All right. So, well, I love how you've utilized all of this. So, what I'm hearing is, yeah, the research, even like official and just like watching movies and documentaries and all that stuff, that the power behind these 8 drivers is really a simplified summary of a wealth of information. So, can you share the 8?
Yeah, sure, of course.
And of course, I'm going to say they're all in the book, The Meaning of Life. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's a 360 page book, so it's a beast. There's more than just the 8, and that's it. But the 8 factors are growth, experience, desire, belief, emotions, ethics, support, choice. Is it okay if I spend a minute or two explaining how all that works?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, people are going to want a little more than that. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I go through the 8 so people know, and they can write them down. They can replay this over and over again. But yeah, so the way that these work, the meaning of life is growth. And I mean that through 3 definitions of meaning, because most people mean like end goal, and that's not a real, there's no such thing as an end goal in life. And some people mean ethics and all these other things, and that's not what that means. The 3 definitions that of meaning that growth fulfills are the definition of life. You can go look it up. It says you can't define life without saying the capacity for growth. That's literally what it says in the definition. So that's part of the definition of life. The second is what's all living organisms' intent. And so, Darwin proved the negative, which is it's to not die, right? It's to survive. But what do you survive to do? You survive to grow. You could say reproduce. That's a form of growth, right? Reproduction is a form of growth. So growth is the point. It's what everyone's trying. Intent is what they're all trying to do. And then finally, it's what makes it significant. So if you think of like lifetime achievement awards or Emmy awards or whatever, like you don't the thing you did not get the award. It like you go up and accept it, right? So they give it to you. And why do they give it to you or a person? They give it to a person because the person grew into the person who could achieve that, who could do that because they kept practicing and getting better until they could do that create that wonderful work of art. So or whatever it is. And so that's why you win awards, because the growth that you show, or the growth that you help others, like maybe you inspire people to do great things, buy your movie or whatever, that's why you win the award. So you can prove that growth is the point through those objective, accessible definitions. Now, here's how everything else works and how that all fits in, because you can curl your finger 1,000 times and then tomorrow curl your fingers 1,001 times. That doesn't necessarily mean that you find it meaningful, right? That's why you need the other things. Can I ask a
question about?
Sure.
Because I'm curious. So the award situation, though, is always external. So I'm assuming that. So what is there in internal or a higher power or something like that? I mean, is it all? Because gosh, what if you do great things, but you're really quiet about it and people don't really know? Is that still growth?
Yeah, it still is. I use the external acknowledgement as a way to show how humanity as a whole inherently understands that growth is what makes life significant. That's why I'm not pointing out that you have to get an award to get validation.
Oh shoot, no.
No, it just means like significance, right? So and then let's take the greater meaning or greater impact or higher meaning that you were just describing. So what does higher meaning or greater meaning mean? Well, honestly, it just means meaning beyond yourself. So how do you get greater or higher meaning? You help others. It's that simple. That is higher, greater meaning. I mean, yeah, you can go sit in a cave on a mountain somewhere and meditate for years and try to get some sort of like higher spiritual awakening or whatever. But you're not going to feel greater purpose unless you're having an impact beyond yourself.
So there doesn't have to be a physical like trophy in it. It could be just a thanks from someone or just knowing that I secretly did the thing and I made this impact. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I just use the award as an example of how people generally acknowledge it.
Awesome. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that because I love what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just a proof. It's not the only thing. Okay. So how do you grow in a way that's meaningful? Well, that's what the other 7 are for. So to summarize, all growth occurs through experience. You have to have Experience is just some sort of action or event or observation over time, right? So you have to have that. You have to have time, and, and you have to have a world, and that's what we live in to have experience, so that you grow. And even if you're thinking that's an experience, so just to close that loop there. The third thing is desire. You have to have motivation to have experiences that lead to growth. That's why we have hunger all the time. We want to go eat, and so you stay alive and grow and thrive. Belief is what sustains you through adversity. So when you face setbacks, your motivation isn't necessarily enough. You have to believe that it's doable. If you don't believe it, then you won't do it. Now that's not guaranteeing, law of attraction, things would say desire, believe, receive, right? I'm not saying that necessarily, because I can't prove that. And I want to stay true to folks who might be atheists or skeptics. I want this to work for them too. So I'm not saying guaranteeing that desire, believe equals receive. I'm saying desire and belief are necessary, and you can't have it without it. Can you have it with it? Well, if you keep going, eventually you'll probably get there, but I can't guarantee it. Emotions are your feedback telling you the relationship between your desires, your beliefs, and your experiences. And if they're all in alignment, you'll feel good, and they're good things. Or if they're in conflict, like if you want something but don't believe you can have it, you'll feel bad. So it's giving you feedback. Ethics are your rules to follow to not hurt other people in your growth objectives. And then you could also have positive ethics, what I call them, where you actually do behaviors that achieve the outcome. But most people think in negative ethics, like laws and things, where it's like, hey, don't punch someone in the face. And so you have to do that to cooperate with other living organisms, because you can achieve more growth that way, which is the seventh item, which is support. You can grow more with others than you can by yourself. Just imagine trying to build a self-driving car from scratch, starting at the beginning of humanity, where you have no physics or math or tools or anything, and you need to do that. Would it take you literally an eternity to do all of that with one person? And you may never do it. But with many people, we are on the precipice of having self-driving cars show up everywhere. And then finally, choice. So everything you do in life is a choice. You choose what you focus on. You choose what you do with your life. You choose what you think. You choose where you put your attention, and you can choose to have meaning. You can choose to be happy. A lot of things in your life are choices, and if you don't choose to do what you want with your life, or make the life that you want, then you are basically choosing to let others choose for you. So those are the 8, and you have to really master those to if you want to drive your sense of meaning and purpose in life.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm thinking back to years ago, someone asked me what my definition of success was, and it, and on its face, it seems like really simple. And I ultimately, not nearly as detailed as you, but it was a blend of, so that the aspiration piece. So the discontent that comes with, I haven't done it yet. Like I have this next thing I want to work on, but also the celebration. So making sure to recognize and acknowledge the progress. And so the blend of the two, because if you only have the celebration, that's always thinking in the past and can lead to like, but now what? And then the discontent of having that next thing, which gives you that motivation and excitement about the next thing. As you were talking, I couldn't help but think about, are you in the US?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't want to make this political, but I want to make it just a little exercise, because I really, in your 8, I was thinking of mask wearing. Is that aligned in any way? And because I started thinking of of course, this isn't like a goal or anything. I guess it was more aligned with like thinking of others and those kinds of things. But does that fit at all? Like, I feel like there's a disconnect right now.
Yeah. And politics are just applied ethics. So you're asking an ethical question. So we can stick with the ethics side. We don't have to get into politics and start naming names of people who are doing things, right? So there, politics, to be blunt, the political divide right now is just a conflict of major ethics. And you can take any argument, right? Let's take some controversial ones. I won't take a position. I'll just list the 2.
Yeah.
So like abortion, for example, it's the right to be able to do whatever you want with your body, which in a vacuum, no one disagrees with the right to life. It's the right to not be harmed. And because one person is inside of another person for 9 months, therefore those ethics conflict. So the question is, which one supersedes the other. And
Right.
that's the debate. It's not one is Hitler and wants to kill everybody, and everybody else is
Right.
virtuous.
Evil, pure evil.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's not like that at all. It's which ethic wins. And the thing is that if you look at the Supreme Court ruling in the U.S. and they drew a line at viability that said before viability, the control your own body ethic takes precedence, and then afterwards the right to life takes precedence. And it's that simple. You're just moving the line around. People are like, well, I want to move the line earlier. Texas did that, right? And other people are like, no, we want the line all the way to go until you come out, and before then you should be able to do whatever you want. And then arguing that the other side is evil if they disagree with you is kind of silly,
helpful.
because it's just like, no, we're prioritizing different ethics. So the mask wearing, the ultimate, so before I get to mask wearing, the ultimate trade-off, all politics in today's environment, not in back when there were like despots everywhere and things, but in a more of a democratic or republic type system, there are just two ethical trade-off, an ethical trade-off between two things. It's public safety and individual liberty. That is it. And you are somewhere on the spectrum. And if you want to pick the philosophies that back those, individual liberty is what you might call libertarian, and the public safety or well-being is what you might call socialist. And so to use those, again, we'll stick with the philosophies, not the politics. If you're a libertarian, you say, I want to be able to do whatever I want to do as long as I'm not hurting anyone else. And if I hurt someone else, I'm accountable for it. And then you have the socialist side that says, no, everybody has to be the same, and everyone has to be well off. And if someone is better than someone else, then that's a wrong, and you have to right it. And you can't hurt anybody, and you can't even be at risk of hurting anyone. That's why we have speed limits and things, because it's not about hurting someone and being accountable for it. It's about making sure that nothing bad ever happens to anyone ever. And even if it restricts your freedom. And so there will always be a fight for all time between those two things, the libertarian metaphorically, or the socialism metaphorically.
Well, and let's not even put the labels on them, really. But I loved what you said
freedom
about
and safety. Freedom and safety.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah. And because no one's communicating about it, everyone's locking on one side or another, and the other side is evil. Yeah. So that's just in a nutshell. I love the simplicity of that. Yeah. Because for me, the masses, yes, the freedom, I get to do what I want. Women can't do what they want, but I get to do what I want and wear a mask or not. But I happen to be in a place right now where the National Guard is here helping because there aren't enough healthcare workers, and the waiting rooms, the ERs are filled, and people are waiting days for beds. And I had a relative of a relative, my cousin's mother-in-law, was having strokes, multiple mini strokes, went to the ER. They had no bed. They sent her home. She's still having strokes. She was collapsing. So someone gets the liberty to wear a mask, but it is impacting others. And so, where do you draw that line?
Yeah. And the mask wearing and the vaccine mandates and all these things, it's all just every single debate that will ever exist from now on, and even before now, will be a freedom versus safety argument. And so mask, it's like, well, you should be free to choose if you should be free to choose what you want to do with your own body, which is the abortion argument. Those same people are trying to force people to have vaccines injected into them. So there are arguments, and this points out that everybody's basically a hypocrite. And I don't mean that in a negative way where people are bad or anything. It's just that when it affects you, you will find some way to justify whatever it is you want, even if it's the opposite of what you think other people should do. And it's just a human nature to
wow. I think when we get into actual problem solving and negotiating, we acknowledge that there's a spectrum. And right now we're not talking spectrum, and we're not talking that others are not evil, and we're not talking, and we can't, if someone has one specific view on one topic, we can't throw them in a bucket and say, I know all of you, because humans are way more complex than that.
Yeah. But you could see it in the law setting, like you have someone who sets a law that says, hey, no one should go out to a restaurant, and then lo and behold, the media catches them at a restaurant, or no one should be able to go and get their haircut. And then you see them going to get their haircut, and because they look at it and go, well, I'm important and this is necessary for my job, and it's like, well, everybody could say that, and it's just, that's the thing, is that when it hurt, that's why when people change their mind when things affect them, like, I was against this rule or law or right or whatever, and then some of my family actually had the thing that I was against, and now I'm for it. It's like, yeah, of course, because as long
Right.
as you don't feel it, you don't
Right.
care, and then once you do care, and it's just really a matter of trying to do the freedom versus safety argument, but then also like, does it affect you argument? Those are the two main things that people like. So like, you don't care about the masks until you know someone who gets sick or you get sick, in which case you want everyone to wear masks. But it's really just a matter of or the opposite, where you're afraid, and so you want everyone to wear
Well, or you're
masks.
somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
like where you are doing the thing where you're objective on both sides and realizing you're not locking in staunchly on one side or the other.
Well, it's just only sides you hear on media are the two extremes, right? So that's why I'm using them as the two sides. But you're correct. Most people are like, well, I wanted to do this, but not this, and this is okay, but not that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what, without a hugely divided country, there's a bit more of that at least. But in the characters allowed on Twitter, people don't get a point across that has nuances at all. So there's no real communication. So, okay. Anyway, I'm just frustrated with the divide and the whole communication thing. So anyway, I had a feeling that you would be able to simplify. So I love that. The freedom versus safety. Yep. That's awesome. All right. Well, sorry, I took a little bit of a sidetrack, but so you talked a bit about the experience that motivated you to make this impact beginning when you were 6 and your father left, which I can't imagine. I know you said you don't really remember the emotions at the time, but it sounds like that was the catalyst that launched you into studying all of this, which again is amazing for 6 years old. But did you at the time or along the way, at what point was it wanting to make a unique impact for the world versus I'm studying all of this to kind of figure out how I can kind of relate to others in a quote unquote more normal way and all of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of why I ended up kind of going this direction is that, I advise executives for, I think it'll be 18 years in March. So I know that that's kind of my purpose in life, and I kind of accidentally fell into it. When I graduated from college, I graduated a semester early because I had enough credits. I actually had enough credits to graduate in 3 years, except I was missing one class. So I took the last semester. I had one finance class left because that was my major. And then I decided to load it up with psychology classes. And what was amazing was two things. One, I found that I was awake and alert and raising my hand all the time in my psychology classes, and I was falling asleep in my one last final finance class. But the second thing that was interesting is that I knew all the answers already in my psychology class because I had already done all the studying. So I knew all the answers there. My favorite one I remember is they're like, oh, when do you does the passion side of relationships fall off in human relationships? And I raised my hand. I'm like, yeah, 18 to 24 months. They're like, yeah, it's 18 to 24 months. I'm like, yeah, because I knew the answer already. And so that's just got the kind of stuff I was studying for years and years. So when I graduated, I fell into this job I had where literally someone named Brooke, who I tried to find out who it was. I still can't to this day, but they're like, hey, Brooke referred you. And I was like, yeah, Brooke. Yeah, wonderful. No idea who that is. And I got referred to a company. It was called Corporate Executive Board. It doesn't exist anymore. It was acquired and changed its name and things. But it was a research and advisory firm for large organizations for executives. And so I started doing it, and I got to the higher levels of it where you get to be the advisor and do this and lead the research efforts. And it's just so amazing. It's so the entire research run was based on the fact that everybody's having issues because they have they believe something that is incorrect. They have a false idea of how the world works or how their problem works. And if you could just correct them and say, no, it's actually this other thing, and then help them see how to act with that new understanding, that they would actually succeed and solve the problem. And so I actually, you couldn't do that for years without affecting you. And I was like, well, I could really apply this. I started applying to my own life. Well, everyone thinks this, but I think this. And so that's why I'm going to do it this way. And look, I have more money than other people because I was able to save or do this, or I was able to, I was happier because I did this, or I was healthier because I did this. And I just kind of looked at it differently. And so that's when I decided to apply it to life. And I was like, if I could just help people understand the drivers and how to figure it out for themselves, I could really help make a difference. But the biggest thing that mattered the most to me was, you see all these like Netflix shows on cults and things. And usually what happens is that these cults, they suck you in because they provide unconditional love to you, right? That's the way that like 99% of them do it, where they say, oh, oh, you're part of us, you're one of us, no one will judge you here, you're part, you're part of the group. And people who are get sucked in are usually the ones who don't feel any of that, right? They feel judged, they feel like they're different, they feel like people don't like them and things like that. And so they immediately get sucked into this group where everyone's providing all this positive regard toward them, and they feel like a part of something. And then eventually, of course, the cult leader usually does something bad, like takes money or abuses them in some way. And so I was like, man, like why is it that you have to go somewhere and I don't mean to lump religion in this, but like whether it's a religion or a cult or it's any of these things, it's like, hey, here's the way the world works, but then you also have to do what I do or believe what I believe or follow me or give me money or whatever it is. And I was like, how can I, break that apart? And I was like, how can I give people the advice that they need, the analysis that they're looking for about how things work so they can master it without all of that either bias or hidden agenda. And so I wrote the book, and I have the site. The site's free. I don't have any ads on it or anything like that. Literally, the only thing I sell is the book. So I don't have any super secret, the super secrets workshops that only the best people get. I don't do any of that. I'm sure maybe one day if I wanted to do it for a living instead of my advisory gig for leaders, that I might have to do stuff like that. But I figured why not take a shot at just kind of trying to here's the answer. I'm just selling the book because it helps me to fund more stuff with this topic. But everything else is just, here are the answers. Figure it out for yourself from there.
Great. I love the story that moved you into this work. So tell me, as you think back, can you describe one impact that you've made either for an individual or maybe it was a team where that really fuels your own passion? Like really has you feel that that success, that celebration point, and also fuels your tenacity and continuing to do the work.
Yeah. Well, the best memory I have in advising leaders, which is kind of what led me into advisory just in general in this path on the book, is I helped someone. People probably won't know what this is, but I was helping someone to create a service catalog. It's an IT thing where you define your services that you provide to the organization, and I helped them the whole way through. I helped them at the beginning; they understood it. I answered questions in the middle and saw what kind of work and gave feedback, and then they came back to me at the end. And I can only describe it. It was almost, I always shoot for the winning the Super Bowl moment, right? Because you watch people win the Super Bowl and they're doing like confetti angels and things. And you're just like, wow, I want to have that feeling. That looks amazing. And so these two ladies, super nice people, came back to me at the end and showed me that catalog and said they presented it to leadership. They loved it so much. They made it mandatory for every shared service part of the organization to provide this catalog. They were saying how great it was and help you. And they were showing all these things and it was all great. And like, I almost had I started tearing up a little bit. I was just like, this is amazing. I was like, this is what it feels like to win the Super Bowl. Cause it's like, oh, wow, you really accomplished something amazing. And you changed someone's life or whatever. And so I was like, wow, that is cool. And so in my, in the book, in terms of that, I mean, it's still early going. I don't have people coming up to me on the street and saying, wow, you changed my life or anything like that. I'm not like a Jordan Peterson or whatever, but I do feel that, there is some things changing. I know some of the reviews on Amazon, for example, were things like this person reminds me of a John Nash or something, and I'm like, wow, that was probably the best compliment I've ever gotten with regards to the book, because they're like, it's like looking inside the mind of a John Nash because he understands how everything fits together. And I was like, wow. And it's that kind of impact. That's what I'm hoping for, and I hope to get more where people read the book and go, oh my God, like that. He figured it out. Like, this is how it all fits together. This is how it works. And this is actually both scientifically proven, but also if I have any faith of any nature, or like I mentioned, law of attraction earlier, if you believe in that, actually all of these concepts are compatible with every philosophy that's ever existed. Now, people may disagree on the what within it, like, well, how your emotions work or what beliefs you should have or whatever. But that every belief system that has ever existed has to cover these 8 things, or they won't help drive your meaning in life.
Wow. Okay. So that's great that you have one of your 8 you're living out. So that's wonderful. So tell me, what has been your biggest internal or external challenge that you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
Oh man, I mentioned it earlier. The idea that once I learned it, therefore everyone knows it. That was probably the biggest thing. So I was like, I kept telling myself, who am I to write this book? Like, it is weird because you could study for 20 years. They always say the best scientists who know more than anyone in the field still act very humble. helpful. In fact, I was watching a thing the other day where the guy, they said, "Do you know a lot about this topic?" And he didn't say yes. He said, "Well, I've been studying this topic for 25 years or whatever." And it was like, it's so humble, not even to say I'm an expert on it, just to say, well, I've been, having these experiences, if you will, to use my vernacular, for 25 years. And so my biggest issue was like, could I do it justice? Would anyone care? What if people said I was wrong? What if I made a mistake? And it turns out a couple things that are good. If you're going to do something that the audience listening here, are thinking of undertaking something similar and have similar thoughts in your head, two things that'll make you feel better. First of all, worst case scenario, no one cares, and so what? So if I put out the book and no one reads it, like, who cares? Like, then no one read it, so I can't, even if I was wrong, no one would know. I'm kidding. But secondly, and the other thing is, you can always change it, you can always fix it, you can always update it. Like the book, you can have a second edition. You can write stuff on your website. You can say, hey, I made this mistake, and write it and fix it in your blog. Like, you can constantly improve. The point of life is to grow, and so you can't grow unless you do something and you're in a state where you didn't do it right, and then you go and become into a state where you come into a state where you did do it right. So to be better, you have to risk encountering issues and things. So I definitely think it was worth it. I'm really glad that I published it, but man, it was so hard. It took me 7 years to write the thing because I kept rewriting it and wondering if I did it justice, and eventually I did actually come to feel good about it, but it did take a long time.
Well, those are wonderful words of inspiration to others, because I doubt anyone listening, I doubt if there's even one person who hasn't had those thoughts. We all do that. I mean, I think that's part of our human nature that we need to overcome. Also, so often when something isn't our gifting, it has come easily to us. We're passionate about it. We love it. And we tend to minimize that too, because it came so easily to us when it's really our unique gift, that we think everyone has this. There's nothing special. And then we look at other people's gifts, what they're good at. And we're like, oh man, I wish I could do that. Yeah. So instead of celebrating what we can do, we waste that energy on the coveting what we can't or what we're not great at. And so I love that. Like, keep going anyway. Just overcome it. And and I love it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Either no one cares or just tweak it, make something different from it. So that's awesome. So I'm sure you, like anyone else, has come across, tough times. And what are some of the strategies that you use to stay motivated and moving during any tough times?
Well, there are a few things. Number one is rest, and don't feel bad about it. So, I mean, that applies to anything. Like, if I don't feel like going to the gym one day, then I don't. It's like, okay, just rest and don't feel guilty about it, and then go to the next day. Or if it's like, oh, I don't feel like working on this thing today, maybe you don't, and maybe you need rest, or maybe you just need time to clear your mind or whatever. Obviously, you can't do that over and over and over again before you just drop it off and turn out you didn't want it to begin with, or didn't want it enough. But it's okay. Sometimes you need rest to stay motivated. You can't just keep burning yourself out. And that's why people say, oh, what if you keep growing and don't find meaning? That's usually what they mean is, what if I keep efforting and not finding meaning anymore? And that's because you haven't rested. But the other thing is, it's okay. Speaking of like things like rest, there are other things in your life. So if you have one goal and you're just working toward it, I mean, there are the Peyton Mannings in the world and things where it's like, okay, I'd be the best quarterback ever, and they just study football 24/7. But as we were talking about with regard to, kind of call back to the politics point, people don't usually operate in extremes, right? So most people have a variety of growth areas. Maybe they have family, maybe they have friends, maybe they have a job, maybe they have a hobby, maybe they have health or fitness goals, and they can have all of those at the same time. And so if something is making them feel down in one area, you just focus on another area for a while, and just let that area kind of go until you feel a little bit better about it. Those kinds of techniques will help you from keeping pushing and not feeling like you're getting anywhere. That's why people use techniques like meditation, mindfulness, and things like that, because it allows you to, saying things like "this too shall pass" or whatever, will allow you to say, "Hey, look, this is a tough time. I'm going to get through it." maybe instead of making myself miserable through it, I try to make myself feel a little bit better, and then I'll be more equipped to get through the tough times. Maybe a new idea will come to my mind in the shower, or maybe I will someone else will come to my life and say, hey, actually, you can solve it this way. Maybe I can go look at the internet eventually when I have the time. So maybe you don't have to solve everything yourself. But it's that number 7, that support item in the 8, that is really the thing that you want to do, to leverage, and just have a whole list of things that can help you. It can be anything from people, experts or family or friends, so that's why I called it support, not cooperation or friendship or anything like that, because living things can support you too, right? Your house keeps you sheltered, and you can eat food, and so certain things can keep you afloat during those times. So find support, and you'll be able to get through it.
That's great. So license to rest and rest without guilt, rejuvenate, balance. Yeah, if you're not focusing on, people talk about like the wheel that is squished in one side because you're gunning it out in one area, but you're letting some other areas, get unhealthy. And then of course that's zapping your energy. And I love your concept of support and thinking not in terms of just people, but on, dwellings and other things. So, that you have a restful place to be, to live, to sleep. It brings to mind too, in terms of our relationships, as someone who's been providing support to others for like 30 years, I found myself, full disclosure, at a place where I didn't have like my kind of team Kirsten, and I had misassigned some people into relationship buckets that had me having expectations that weren't really aligned with what the relationships actually were. And what I mean by that is, again, I was serving in so many different ways through my work, and then I had started a ministry, so I was serving there. I had all these people in my life, but then when I had gone through some tough times, I felt like, wow, like where are the people? And it was, I had not kept a good blend of also the relationships, either symbiotic or those relationships that were like my trusted advisors or my key people who were going to be in my corner. So that support piece, I think it's so important to, it can feel like, oh, they're going to, I'm doing all this serving, they're going to be there for me, but they see you in a different light. And so not only will they probably likely not be there when you need them, but also there's going to be that disappointment of why aren't you there? But they're seeing you in a serving role. They're not, it's not symbiotic. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but anyway, this part of it is like recalibrating sometimes the relationships, and then making sure that you have a good blend of all the different kind of relationships, especially if you're working to make your impact.
Yeah, and you kind of hinted at something. A lot of people worry about things like addictions and things like that, and of course, you do want to avoid them. But one of the big reasons for addictions is the negative emotions toward the thing that comforts you, right? So, like people who, let's take eating issues. So, like, let's say you eat a tub of ice cream or something when you're feeling bad, but then you feel bad about eating the ice cream, and then it just creates a negative cycle. And that's the difference between someone who does that in an unhealthy way, and then someone who does it in a healthy way. I mean, you can eat some ice cream. I eat ice cream almost every night, and it makes me feel better. But then it makes me feel better. I accept that that's what I did to feel better, and then I move on, and I do something, like I go exercise or whatever and things like that. So it's the people who have that just feel it, a lot of it is like the guilt and the negative emotions, and then they do destructive behaviors and then feel bad about that, and it's just a never-ending death spiral of bad things. And so if you can come to a healthier relationship with things that comfort you in life, whether it's rest or whether it's food or whether it's video games or whatever it is that you like to do, and then say, look, I'm going to do this for like an hour. I'm going to do this for this thing, and I'm going to be happy about it. I'm not going to feel guilty. And then that can be part of the recovery process. It's when you say, oh, well, screw it. It's all like over anyway, and I'm going to just self-destruct. That's where it becomes unhealthy. And I think if you maintain that difference, that you can be able to get through tough times with that support, but not have it turn into a crutch or at worst some sort of addiction or unhealthy behavior.
Yeah. So powerfully choosing the thing and with limits that you're placing on it. And again, not out of a have to, but what creates a life of balance where it still truly is supporting you versus kind of taking you down.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes. Yes. Oh, this has been such an amazing conversation. I love the way your brain works, by the way.
I
I
appreciate that.
love the I love the analytical way that you look at the world, and your ability to simplify very complex topics. And so go get his book. It is The Meaning of Life. And again, you can find that at yourmeaninginlife.com. The link will be at today's show notes. If you go to the defeatthedrama.com, click on the podcast tab and go to episode 255, you will find that link and any others to get in touch with Nate. So any final parting words, Nate?
Sure. So just to summarize everything we talked about today, if you want to make an impact, words of wisdom: first, find a growth area that you enjoy being a part of. Second, find experiences that can help you develop in that area. Third, build your desire, motivation to do those things, both the experiences and to have the outcome. Fourth, believe that you can do it. Fifth, use your emotions as feedback as to whether you're moving toward growth or whether you're afraid or feeling harm. Sixth is then the ethics. So do things in a way that make you feel good about what you're doing. Seventh, support. Make sure that you get help on your journey and you don't have to do it alone. And then finally, choice. Make sure that it's the little choices in life. Your life is a sum of many small choices, not necessarily some big choice that changes everything. So just make good choices that get you toward a better state, and you'll find your life to be more meaningful.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much for that summary. And again, thanks so much for sharing all your wisdom today and for the amazing book that you've written. And I just want to throw out there, if you are working to make your impact and you need any kind of additional support, you can also find a wealth of digital resources. And actually I have a little one-page sheet, relationship renovation roadmap. If you are struggling with some of the relationships and maybe needing to recalibrate expectations or make sure that you've got your right support in line, you can find that for free actually by going to myimpactacademy.com/gifts. You'll see it along with a few other freebies, both video and PDF downloads. So definitely go there. Again, that's myimpactacademy.com/gifts and look for the relationship renovation roadmap. So again, Nate, thanks so much. And I look forward to staying connected and to monitoring and seeing all the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.